Good morning, everybody. My name is Siobhan Hennessy. I'm a programme coordinator with the Irish Medtech Skillnet. We just still have people joining there, so we're just going to give them all a moment or so. We'd just like to mention that this meeting is being recorded, and we will share the recording following this webinar as well. We're delighted to see so many on the call. I think we still have just a few people joining there. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We would ask everybody, you'll have joined the call with your mics off and your cameras off. We would ask you to please keep those off, please, to just allow the speakers on camera and with their mics on also. So we'll just run through. I think we've pretty much, are we okay, Sarah? Yeah, I think we've pretty much a good few on the call there. We might just run through the order. So first of all, Anne O'Connell, who is the head of funded projects, medtech and engineering with IBEC, will set the scene for the programme, for our Living Leadership programme, and just give a little bit of context and background on the programme. Next, we will hear from Derek McCann and Marianne McGowan of GENOS Europe, who will just run through the details of the programme structure, speak a little bit on the previous programme that we ran last year in 2025. We will hear then from 3 alumni of that programme, Nora O'Brien, Shane Quinlan and Julie Podroslova. Then we will have a Q&A session for, you're almost welcome to ask questions or if you have any queries and so on. The Q&A is enabled on this webinar also, so feel free to put any questions throughout the session in there and we will address them. And we'll also take questions on mic and so on as well. So that's pretty much it. As I said, if there's any queries at all, feel free to put them into the Q&A. And Anne, I think I'll hand over to you then. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Siobhan, and welcome everybody. It's great to be here and delighted to be in a position to be able to present this programme. As Siobhan has said, this has been recorded and we're happy to share this recording with people afterwards that weren't able to make our webinar today. So we have a really good panel lined up today to speak, with Derek and Marianne really speaking about the programme and the structure and where it's come from from a GENOS perspective. And then we have Nora, Shane and Julie to speak to you from an industry perspective. And I think that's who everybody really needs to hear from. And so you can relate to the people that are actually doing the programme. I think that piece is always very, very, very important. So as Siobhan said, I'm Anne O'Connell, Head of Funded Projects with Medtech and Engineering and IBEC. And I want to speak to what we do from a Skillnet perspective, but then also what we do from these type of programs perspective. And it's really important that the programs that we run hit the mark for the people that sign up onto the program, because if they don't, we really don't want to be involved, and we listen to what industry want and we hear what industry want. And if a program isn't running in the structure that we need it to or wanted to, we will change things. And that's what we've done in the past with regards to this program specifically. But I'm just going to go back one step. The Irish Medtech Skillnet is set up to meet the needs of the medtech sector, but then from a upskilling and reskilling perspective, that's what we do. So we've got programs all the way from like 1 day Excel training program, all the ways up to masters in reg affairs, masters in sterility assurance, a masters in digital manufacturing. But we also do a lot of work on the whole area of transversal skills. So, and this being one of those type of programs where it started out actually as a female leaders program. I think it was 2021. And at the time we had developed the program to really get to support leaders at a certain point in their career to be able to take the next move and to be able to speak to people outside, people who were knowledgeable in the area, to be able to support them within their career. And the program was good, but we got feedback that it wasn't hitting all the notes that it needed to hit. One of the really specific pieces was actually at the outset that you really needed that 360 psychometric evaluation of a person, where they were at, where they were, where the type of person they were, and the work then that they could do with both a personal coach and with within their own sort of groups that they could work with it within the program. So we really wanted to set that piece out. The other piece that we really wanted to do as well was have senior leaders speak. And we did have senior leaders speak on that program. One of those senior leaders who has stayed with us throughout since the outset of the program is Conor Russell from Boston Scientific. And Conor will be speaking to the group again on one of the days. We have Geraldine Garvey from Stryker going to speak to us as well. And it's really, really important that we're able to have our senior leaders speaking to the whole group. And that they can relate, and they talk to the areas where they struggled, and they talk to the areas where they had resilience and they worked through it, and they talk to the areas of where they went through coaching as well. So that piece is really, really important for us to be able to get that message across, and to be able to, for people to be able to relate, because you won't be able to relate to everything, I think, on the program, or everybody. But that group interaction came out really clearly from last year's group, and we're going to talk about that today. So Derek, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to yourself and Marianne to really speak to the structure of this program. And then we'll take it from there. Oh, and sorry, and one other person is Vivian Farrell from Air Ireland is going to speak to, and talks to from an SME perspective, because one of the pieces that we got back last year was we had 3 multinationals leaders speaking to the group, and this year we now have Vivian Farrell, who started up her own SME company in Shannon, and then has brought that now in, and it has been acquired. She leads 3 different companies now across Ireland for Air International. So we've covered, I think, all bases, which is always really, really important. So sorry for interrupting, Derek. I'm going to pass over to yourself and Marianne.
Super, thank you very, very much indeed, and delighted to meet you folks. I'm Derek McCann from GENOS, and what I'd like to do is just set the scene a little bit and talk about, if you like, the philosophy around this program. And don't worry, I'm not going to get philosophical. Philosophy with a small p. And then Marianne is going to come in and flesh out that philosophy a little bit. Now, to give you a sense of what makes this program different, what I'd like to do is a really quick thought experiment, and it'll only take a couple of moments, but it'll really give you a sense of what is it that distinguishes the experience that Nora, Shane, and Julie, whom you'll hear from later on, had on this program that you won't have on other programs. So let me ask you to bring to mind the best boss you ever worked for, somebody that, all things being equal, you would have no hesitation working for them again. So somebody that it just gelled, and you would go back and work for them in the morning, all things being equal. Now, if you're unlucky enough not to have had that experience, pick a colleague that you really brought out the best in you and really made it easy for you to bring the best version of yourself into things. And all I want you to do, I'm not going to make you work. All I want you to do is just think for a moment. I'll give you maybe 10 seconds to reflect on if I asked you to write down the first 3 words that came into your mind for how that person made you feel, what would those words be? So just bring those to mind. Now, I don't want adjectives describing that person. I want, how did they make you feel? So did you feel depressed, anxious, upset, excited, positive, engaged, motivated, whatever are the first 3 words, and just see if you can see those words in your mind. You can scribble them down on paper, of course, if you like, but just bring those words to mind. Okay, and then as you're holding those words, and I apologize for doing this to you at 10 o'clock in the morning, but I want you to bring the worst boss you ever worked for to mind. That person that there is not enough money in the world for me to want to work for that person again. It just not in this lifetime will that ever happen. And again, I want you to do the same thing and think of what are the first three words that come into your mind that describe how they made you feel. What was the impact on you? How were you feeling on Sunday night when you were thinking about working with this person on Monday morning? So if you've got that held in your mind, let me ask you to give me a show of hands if the sorts of words that came out for you were a little bit like these ones. So just use the hand raise there and just give me a show of hands for if these are the sorts of words that came into your mind. Yeah, and I'm getting the shows of hands all over the place. And these are the social sciences have been doing deep research on these sorts of topics over the last 30 years. And broadly speaking, one of the big questions they've asked is the one I've just asked you. And broadly speaking, this is one of the responses they get. So that person made you, interestingly, happy comes up every time. If you stop 100 people on the street and you say, why do you go to work? Nobody will say to get happy. And yet it's a distinct possibility if you're working with the right people. But you see all these words, valued, appreciated, supported, engaged, etc. And those are the sort of words that come up, and they come up every time. Every culture, every nation, every race, every language, every group, every industry, every single time. And that's really important. Now, they are called by the psychologists productive emotions. Because when you feel happy, appreciated, relaxed, inspired, positive, respected, when you feel those productive emotions, guess what? You are the best. You're capable of bringing the best version of yourself into the room. You become the very best version of yourself. And you engage more, you bring more, you motivate more, you light the room up more. Now, if I was to turn it to dark for a moment, and said, bring to mind those words that you take your hands down now, by the way, just so I can get you to put them up again in a moment. Bring to mind the words that came into your mind for the worst boss. Give me a show of hands if they included words like this, like stressed, like anxious, isolated, dread, underappreciated, gaslit, demotivated, etc. All of these words. And guess what? No great shock. They're called unproductive emotions. Because bottom line, if you're feeling anxious, stressed, isolated, dread, most of you have seen the neuroscience lectures over the last couple of years, you're on high alert. You're in stress mode, you're in fight or flight. And when you're thinking of running out of the room, you cannot bring the best version of yourself into the room. So these are questions that we ask you at the beginning of every program. These are questions we've asked in our research for the last 20 some years of the existing of the organization. It's one of the questions that social science has been asking for the last 30 years. And the way I like to summarize the findings here, and this is really important in the context of this program, is that the way you show up, that is the attitude, the behaviors, the mindset that you bring into the room, which is a choice, the way you show up determines the way people feel. So the way your best boss showed up, the mindset, the behaviors, and the attitudes they brought into the room, the way they showed up determines the way you feel, or has a huge impact on the way you feel. And the way you feel has a huge impact on everything. Let me ask you, would it be fair to say, give me a show of hands, that you were more engaged with the best boss than the worst boss? Give me a show of hands for that. Would it be fair to say that you were more engaged with the best? Yeah, it's an absolute no-brainer. And you know what? You don't need 30 years of research for it. Here's what the core is. The way you show up determines the way people feel. The way they feel determines the extent to which they engage, and that determines everything. Every great leader you've ever worked with understood, either instinctively or learned, how to show up so that they had that impact on you, so that they engaged you, so they got the best out of you, and for the organization. And that is so fundamental to the social sciences now that the big shock comes when you realize most leadership programs pay no attention to it whatsoever and continue to focus on the important but not seminal skills of the technical side of leadership and management, project planning and resource planning and delegation. And they're all important. But when you get to a stage where you have to influence people, where when you walk into a room, you want to engage people and bring them along with you, it's really important that you understand how to show up. And so the golden thread that runs through this entire program is that whole theme of giving you the practical, immediately usable skills to show up in a way that you impact people to get the best from them, the best for them, the best for the organization. And that's what I think you'll hear reflected when Nora and Shane and Julie talk about their experience on the program. So that is, as I say, the small p philosophy of what runs through as a thread through the program. Now, I'm going to turn to Marianne, and Marianne's going to roll up her sleeves and give you a little bit of the nuts and bolts and how do we actually do that. Marianne.
Thanks, Derek. Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Hope you had a restful and pleasant long weekend. Okay, so maybe I'll just take you on a little bit of a journey of the program itself. One of the things so we were having a chat just before we came on, and one of the things that Julie said, and it kind of got me reflecting a little bit on how we even set up the program. Julie said it felt like such a safe place for us to have real conversations. That we shared experiences and challenges with each other. Now, remember, for the most part, when we ran this program before, people were strangers to each other. So we worked really hard at the very beginning of the program to create the kind of space where people feel psychologically safe. And I think that runs right through the program. It's really important to us. It's something that we have as a value in terms of how we show up to the people that we work with and how we want them to feel working with us, right? So we open the program really creating that sort of clear agreement around how do we make the best of this program? How can we create the conditions where I can bring my true, honest self to the program? The second thing I will say is, of course, there's content and we deliver, I think, some really beautiful content, but there's wisdom in the room. That space where people can learn from each other, share those experiences that they have, that's equally important, right? I know for some of the reason that people go on programs like this is they want to meet people from across different industries to learn from each other. So that's really sort of stitched into the program. 360-degree feedback, the emotional intelligence leadership assessment is a powerful backbone to the program. I think if I were to pull something out, it's who you are is how you lead, but we all have blind spots, right? Most of us are so well-intentioned, and we do know that as leaders, we have the most significant impact on the employee experience. The figure of 70% is what Gallup would tell us, right? Of the variance in the employee experience comes down to the leader. So we're really important. How we show up is really important. So when you do the 360 feedback and you're debriefed with the coach who's trained in this area, you really get some insights into, gosh, you know what? I'm doing some stuff really well here. I'm showing up in a way that I'm proud of here. I'm making a real good impact here. Keep going. But you're also going to notice some of those blind spots. And coming out of that 360, you'll have a real clear sort of sense of, okay, this is where my development plan. Here's my green growing edge. Right. And over the course of the program, you get to work with a coach over 3 sessions. So that support and that dialogue and that thinking space is available to you. And that's really important because we need to be able to translate what we're learning in the room to our lived reality. Right. Some of the things that we cover, of course, emotional intelligence runs through the program. But I think a lot of this program is really about intentionality. Like, we're all so busy, right? Like, Tuesday morning has landed and here you are in a webinar, but your emails are, your inbox is full. You've meetings all day. Like, it's kind of mad, isn't it, out there, right? So you come to this program to step off that madness a little bit and to sort of bring some intentionality into your world, right? We talk about mattering and the power of mattering. One of the things we say is we tend to focus on what's wrong before we see what's strong. So bringing some intentionality into, what are you noticing about your people and how can you practically create a sort of a culture of mattering in your environment? How do you show up as a leader that creates robust trustworthiness with those around you? we will, of course, tell you, yeah, credible, you know your stuff, you're reliable. But actually, what's going to surprise you most is your trustworthiness is a real felt experience. When you think about somebody that you really trust, you feel that before you think that. So that emotional connection, that ability to connect with people, it's a big factor in trustworthiness. We help you sort of build that robust trustworthiness in your leadership. Psychological safety forms part of the program, and that sweet spot between creating an environment where we have high accountability and high safety. And what does that look like? And then, of course, back to you as an individual, because what you will experience from us absolutely is you will matter to us and your success will matter to us. So one of the modules is setting yourself up for success. And really, it's about intentionally thinking about all of my life domains, right? Work takes up so much of our lives, right? So much of our lives, but actually, it can't be at the expense of everything else. So we take a kind of a holistic view of your life, because if you can find the energy that balances it all out to some extent, then you thrive in all areas, including in terms of how you show up as a leader. We get you to intentionally think about your career vision for yourself rather than plod along and suddenly 10 years have gone by. Actually, what is the direction of travel and what action are you going to take in that direction of travel? We look at how obstacles can be opportunities. It all depends on how we meet them. And I talk about this idea, this concept of, are we above the line or below the line in relation to circumstances and conditions that life throws at us, that work throws at us? How are we meeting those situations? Are we meeting them from a place of reactivity and disconnection, right? Which is really us in, to some extent, like victimhood at the effect of the situation? Or are we going above the line and choosing? How am I responding to the situation? How am I connecting in with, connecting to my values rather than my triggers, right? Turning obstacles into opportunities is also about how do we manage those challenging conversations, right? They are part and parcel of leadership, leaning into the discomfort of challenging conversations and challenging people. And we give you tools and techniques around that, and it won't surprise you to know that part of that is being a perspective taker before you're perspective giver. We do things like those 3 levels of listening. We talk a little bit about leaning into curiosity, asking those questions that make the invisible visible, challenging the assumptions we make. All of that kind of good stuff is brought into that. And I'm conscious of my time, but to mention 1 or 2 more things. As we bring the program to a close, we also ask you to look around you, right? Because the people around you shape you. They shape your leadership. We ask you to intentionally look at your network. We ask you to intentionally see like who's out there that could mentor me, who's out there that could be a sponsor. How might I better leverage coaching so that I can be the best leader that I can be in the world for myself and for others going forward. We look at how you influence people. Influence, you don't tell people who you are, you show them, right? Influence is about the impact that you're having. And we close off on that. Derek brings us home as we close out the program with your leadership vision and really zoning in on those couple of things that you're going to say, I'm walking out of this program. This is who I seek to be. This is who I will continue to be. And these are the steps I'm really going to bring some attention to as I go forth. And really, one of the things I always say is people function better with clarity. And our intention is you come out of this program with clarity for yourself, for the kind of leader that you are and the kind of leader that you aspire to be and the career that you wish to have for yourself. So yeah, I may stop it there. I think that hopefully gives you a flavor of the program and hopefully maybe even a sense of our own excitement around the delivery of it and how much we love to do this work.
Thanks, Marianne. Thanks, Derek. And actually, I'm just going to ask you to stay on camera and I'm going to bring Julie, Shane and Nora into the conversation now in the next minute. But just to get a sense of how this all ties together. First of all, this year, the program is now accredited by the Institute of Leaders, right? So the Institute of Leadership has approved the program and it's accredited by that group, which is great. So that's new for the program this year. But just to get a sense of the journey then that a person will go on, as in not necessarily the emotional journey, but the actual practical piece of it where somebody will, so we have in-person sessions, that's the first day and the last day. And they're both in the Castletroy Park in Limerick. prior to that, you'll have completed your own 360 psychometric analysis. There is three sessions, as you said, Marianne, with a coach. One of those is in person and the other two are online. And then there are how many online group sessions then that happen after that initial meeting? Is it, I think it's three online, I think it's three online and
Three online, that's right.
yeah. And the leaders speak then on those programs as well. So the senior leaders will be on one of each of those days. So I suppose just to give people that kind of practical insight into the journey in a physical way as well. So basically you'll need to be present on 2 days in person, which is great because I think everybody found a benefit from that when they did the program and got to know the group as well throughout the whole day, which is really good. So it enables that connection, and also that connection with the coaches I think is really, really important, because Derek and Marianne, you're both coaches on the program, right? So just to give people a sense of who those one-to-one coaches are as well, and plus all of the peer-to-peer group sessions that happen and people connect as well on that. So I just wanted to, I suppose, clarify that for people as well. So I'm just going to bring Nora, Shane and Julie into the conversation. And Nora, I'm going to start with yourself. And I'd really like to get a sense of, so you're a director of R&D at Irish Medical, right? So I'd really like to just get a sense of, for just about 3 or 4 minutes, of when you came onto this program, what was your motivation, and your sense of the program before you went onto it, and what it was when you actually came onto it.
Good morning, everyone. So I suppose to address that first point, I have done several leadership courses over the years. They've always been very heavy in theory, or, talking to different focuses. And the company I work with, which is an SME based in Galway, when I joined, we were very lucky. At early startup days, the team was quite small, 5 or 7 people, and the leadership at that time put a lot of emphasis and energy on looking at things like emotional intelligence and building a culture. So for me, that was my first exposure to any of the principles that came up in this course. So over the years, I have been keeping an eye out for something that would allow me to delve into that a little bit more deeply. And initially, the brochure ticked all the boxes, and I was looking at a lot of the words we're talking about here today. They can be buzzwords. They're kind of like the hot topic. You need to be emotionally intelligent, all that kind of stuff. So I did go in quite reserved of, is this going to be another one of those? And as you said, the course started with it starts and ends with an in-person. And I think after that first day, it's quite ironic. One of the words that's mentioned 2 or 3 times is psychological safety. But that room, that first day, that was a key principle to the course. We're very lucky with GENOS, with Derek and Marianne. They created that psychological safety in the room. And in case anybody thinks that, we were all hugging each other by the end of the day, it wasn't a sense of that. It was built over the course itself. And on that first day, there was little exercises that, they were done digitally or over your phone first, and then they developed into sessions, into group. It was very natural. And it really fostered that kind of open conversation with practical examples, not just sitting back on theory again. And Derek talked to the bad boss, good boss. That was one of the very first things. So they're always things you've thought about over the years, but never been able to put language or action around them. So again, very, very practical from that sense. And then I think because you had that grounding in that first day, and where we all connected again at the end, I often find virtual courses a challenge because by the nature of what you mentioned, Mary, you've stuff going on in the background, there's a Teams chat coming in, you're being distracted. But because you had that grounding in the first day, it allowed the virtual sessions to work. So you said we had a couple of those, we kept cameras on, we had good kind of patterns that we used, or rules, I suppose, for those to keep engaged. And again, credit to the GENOS team. those half-day sessions online, that's a challenge to keep people engaged on that length of time.
Yeah.
But there was no session that I would have said across any of those where I was like, okay, I just need to switch off, or I could have done without this day. I felt I took something from every day as we went through the virtual sessions. So talking on some of the other points that has come up there, the coaching element. Again, over the years, I would have always thought about a coach. God, I'd love to try that. Must be what I need to move forward in my career, right? I have to do this. And I always was held by this, well, I have to find the right person, or the relationship has to be right. There has to be trust and all that sort of thing. So what I liked about what this course gave us was a combination of the coaching matched with the 360. Because again, 360s, everyone's had a go at them at some point in your career, and what happens to them, you have this lovely little booklet where you realize, okay, that's not where I'm great. You might take one thing away from it, and all us type A's are going to go, well, that's where I scored the worst. That's what I'm going to have to work on, and I'll just work on that and nothing else. Whereas pairing the 360 with the coaching, for me, I found really strong, because you had the report that you looked at yourself first, and then probably a lot of us would hit ourselves or beat ourselves up of, well, of course I didn't score well there, or whatever, and I knew that, or I didn't know that. But the coaching element allows you to really interpret that report and then build in it. What I used it personally was used it in a couple of courageous conversations is a term that you'll come across on the course. It allowed me to engage in one or two of those things that I would have actively avoided before, or how to more proactively have a conversation, to a better outcome. So that's something I would have to say as a key takeaway for me from the course. And I'm actively looking at following on that coaching element, because I could see the benefit, as opposed to, oh, here's something I have to, do, show the positive side of it. So it gives you enough, those 3 sessions give you enough of a taster of that to see if it works for you or it doesn't work for you. I think that was a big one for me. The speakers, Mary, you touched on them as well. And what I really enjoyed is we had 3 very different backgrounds that spoke on the day, and very diverse, all in the medtech arena, but they were so open, and they actively talked about their failures. Was a common thread across all 3, and not in a did bad and I moved on, but it was just so open. It was, again, with the nature of the course, that failures, yeah, okay, I did that wrong, and I decided to go and do it a different way, or I learned from it, or whatever. Again, there are things you'd have heard over the years, learn from your mistakes. But now you're looking at someone who's been through all those mistakes and are very transparent about them and how it shapes them as well. Yeah. So I found that with the combination of just 3 different, very, very different perspectives, quite strong. I came off, feeling geared up after listening to those 3 speakers. And I think, again, one thing I was asked to talk about, well, what were your takeaways? What are the things that stick with you or stay with you after you've done the course? And some of that is the toolkit, not one independent thing, but probably one that definitely stays with me is active listening. Over the years, again, you think, yeah, sure, yeah, I listen. I'm good at that. But it really opened up my eyes that I wasn't. I was getting to a certain level, and then I was either inserting myself into the conversation, or I was going, here's the solution. Come on, let's get through this. And I saw that as helping the person. And the irony of all that is a lot of those conversations, what somebody is talking about is not really what they're talking about. It's something completely unrelated. So that was kind of an eye-opener for me as well. And how, again, I talked to the toolkit. You can recognize something, but how do you take action? I mean, what Derek and Marianne talked on the course here is like, well, if you're in something like here's 5 questions. Could any of those have worked for you? Try this out the next time. And it's exactly that, where I would have been jumping in to fix because again, fix the problem, help somebody along and empower them to do it themselves. And more active people, everybody has the solution inside themselves as well. So I think that was a big takeaway for me, and helps validate everyone around you as well as your own as a leader within that relationship. And then the networking piece, I say with a grin, because it's a bit, no matter what you do in these different situations, you'd be well able to go around and talk to people maybe, but that pushing yourself forward out isn't something that I would have said, yeah, runs naturally either. And since doing the course, there's 2 or 3 areas where I have pushed myself forward a little bit more and actively enjoy it. For example, going on a webinar talking about a course. There you go. These aren't
Who
things
knew?
that who knew. Not saying I'm starting a career out of it or anything now, but those types of things, to feel that safety to push forward and just try things out. They may not work out for you, but that's okay. At least you've given it a shot. So I've kind of touched on some of the points
that's I think that's a brilliant summary, and I think it really captures the program as a whole and the feedback we're getting. And one of the pieces I'm going to come back to yourself, Shane, and Julie at the end, is just around the fact that you do also get peer-to-peer feedback right from the program. It's part of actively going out and manage your feedback, so that gets that reflection, because I know I had to fill in some of those forms and I got questions back, which was great, because the person comes back for clarity around, the person doing the program can get clarity from either their boss or from their peers on what it is that's going on, what they meant by something. And I think that was great to drive that as well. So thank you very much. And I'm going to just jump over to Shane now to come on camera and to talk to us as well and give us that feedback on his experience similar to yourself. Hi, Shane.
Hey, Shane.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So for me, I suppose I'm at a stage in my career where I'm looking at the next phase. So it'll be very early days for me, and I went on this course at the recommendation of my manager and kind of training and development, thought it would be good for me. So I came into the course probably expecting management 101 or something to that effect. Probably maybe a bit allergic to even attending something like that. And the course was completely different from what I expected. Real modern thinking with the emotional intelligence. And I think the guys really did, to echo Nora's comments, to build that psychological safety and trust within the group early days. Looking back, it seemed seamless to them, but I'm guessing they worked really hard at it, right? But their commitment and their, I suppose, just really powerful presenters, really strong content, just well put together, well executed. I've been on, I don't know, probably pushing 80 courses over the last 2 decades. And there's a handful that will stand out to you, and you'll just never forget them. And this is one of them for me. There's like several moments throughout the course where there's a universal truth coming out that's applicable, right? You take it in, the penny drops it, and I think the presenters worked really hard with the groups to make sure that the penny dropped, but it didn't take them that long, Take what Nora said with colleagues and the course, that real good interaction. Like we agreed with ourselves within groups, these are the rules we're going to have. We're going to be transparent here. We're going to, assume trust and let's go for take a risk. And it was productive, So like, I suppose I one of the things that really struck me early days, and you touched on it at the start of the webinar, is your best boss versus your worst boss. And some people on the course had, an average enough boss all their career, and nothing bad, nothing good. I've been fortunate, I'd say, in both regards, to have some of the very best bosses, and I had one particularly bad boss. And when that question came up, and one of the colleagues on the course, she mentioned that her worst boss had made her feel, when she thought of him, she felt as small and as underappreciated right then as she did 30 years ago. And I was like, 30 years ago, and I was thinking of someone maybe 10 or 12 years ago, 15 years ago. I was like, it stays with you for a lifetime. And I was like, what if someone's saying that about me, you know, in the future? I don't want to be that guy, right? So I suppose, the course really does hook you into the why you're doing this, right?
Yeah.
It gives you the tools and the techniques at the end, but they're modeling the behaviors for you all along the course. And it's really about, I suppose, it is about emotional intelligence, but it's with a purpose, with intent, right? Not just skill sets or intent that you can deliver at work, but in your life too, right? And I think for me, very much the journey came across, right? You're not going to be, running tomorrow, but you start implementing some of these practices, some of these techniques, getting that awareness of where your gaps are. As well, what Nora said about presenters, like one of the things we said on the course was, when we're talking to each other, let's be real, there's no linear career progressions here, and we don't want to hear, an edited Hollywood career story. We want reality, we want transparency, and that came across massively. I mean, all the leaders, as Nora said, they all had something. They were like, I messed up or got something wrong, but here's what I took from it. Here's what I learned from it. One of the speakers would have, been very forthcoming. I advanced quickly and I wasn't ready, and here's what I learned from that journey. So these are obviously things to motivate you and keep you focused. I suppose the 360 feedback for me was massive with the mentor, because I got that report back and I started looking at it one way, and then I have a meeting with the mentor and it's like, what way do you think? He carefully, through questioning techniques and prompting, would nudge you in a different mindset, just to explore, what does the person actually, what else might they mean, as opposed to, you need to communicate more, or you need to do this or that. So that I found that very helpful. Like obviously, like I said, the sessions, everyone's busy, and the half-day kind of virtual sessions were nice. It was a nice pace. It kept you coming back. I wanted to show up to this course, so every day, we're all busy people. Nearly everyone on that course, I can tell you, was insanely busy. Everyone showed up every day. There might have been one day where one of the group couldn't show up, and they're issuing apologies and like, can I catch up, and definitely talking to each other outside. There was a couple of the colleagues on the team. There was some messages over and back. So for me, really, at the end of it all, I can't say enough good things about the course. I'd really recommend it. And I suppose just some of the techniques or the I suppose skills that it's given me, or behaviors that I've noticed that I've changed. So I would always be very much for thanking someone at the end of the task or at the end of a project, and not really celebrating the wins, and taking time with the team, little rewards, little recognition, little appreciation. And there's a weekly appreciation task that I do. I have in my calendar every week. I don't do it every week, but I do it most weeks. I won't spoil it because Derek has to have something to talk about on the course. But I've done it. I've probably done it nearly every second week at least since the course, and it's about specific appreciation to individuals, and this course is just about, like, how would you feel if someone did this for you or with you, and it's you straight away you recognize the universal truth of, yeah, it would be nice not just to get a token thanks, but thanks for this, and taking some of this stuff into your home life as well, like the guy said about showing up. It's not just about showing up at work, and showing up at home too. So I think there's universal lessons coming out of this course. So I'm very appreciative myself to have been on it, very grateful to the presenters, and felt lucky with colleagues that I got to participate on the course with as well.
Great. And Shane, thank you very much. And actually, I was there day one and the final day as well. And it was great to see that we had the full cohort the whole way through the programme, which I think says an awful lot for the programme, because if programmes aren't delivering for people, there will be a fall off. Okay. And another great thing about this is that I didn't mention at the beginning is the fact that actually the programme is subsidised by the funding from the Irish Medtech Skillnet, as well as actually the development of the programme. We're also able to support people with subsidised funding to go on the programme, which is also another, I think, positive, not necessarily a driver for every company, but definitely something that does help companies in general. So Julie, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to to yourself to get your perspective, where you started, where you are today, and what the program has what you feel the program has done for yourself.
Thanks, Anne, and thanks for having me today as well. I hope everyone had a lovely weekend and enjoyed the long weekend as well. So I suppose where I was when I started the course, I was a team lead in a medtech company. I was leading quite large teams at team lead level as well, at one point up to 10 people coming from diverse backgrounds, different, I suppose, geographical locations as well. And I've done a number of leadership courses in the past. A lot of them would have been in-house, but what Derek said earlier, actually, a lot of them focused on kind of the technical aspects of management. While they did touch on maybe some active listening or some emotional intelligence, that wasn't the kind of the primary focus. And I definitely felt that I needed, probably additional tools in my toolbox, additional skills, to manage such large teams with diverse cultural backgrounds, kind of different social expectations and different ways of working. So this course was recommended to me initially by my manager at the time, or my director at the time, and I thought it looked really interesting. So I signed up, and I suppose from the first session that was in person, like the other two alumni have already said, Shane and Nora, that there was a real sense of psychological safety. And I don't know how Marianne and Derek did it, but you guys did it. And I think everybody came to it and left their, kind of prejudices, their predispositions, their pride at the door. And it was a lovely, inclusive, transparent environment. Even I remember on the first day kind of sharing something or saying something, and I didn't feel like, I could be judged, or someone could be like, oh my God, what is she talking about? That is, you know, whatever, that's not right, or something like that. So there was definitely a real sense of psychological safety. So the other, I suppose, major learnings for me from the course were active listening, and also the kind of the coaching part and the 360 review. So in terms of active listening, I think we all have the best intentions, and we try to listen to the best of our abilities. And I know for myself, I'm definitely a relator. So when someone brings something up, I tend to unintentionally hijack the conversation with my own experiences, which, are coming from a good place. And I previously thought that, that was okay. But I think this course has really showed me another way of thinking and of approaching conversations. And we did some great exercises where we did it in the room, or we watched videos and kind of assessed whether people were really listening or not listening, and putting ourselves in the shoes of the person speaking rather than the listener. So I thought those were really important. And I've definitely taken away from the course, you know, asking questions rather than relating. I have to sit back and I have to ask questions, and I have to really listen, um, to see what is making someone feel the way they're feeling. Is there something in the background, and what can I do to support them? Um, maybe it's not a solution. Maybe it's not, a situation that I was in. Maybe it's to support them with conversation that will help them find their own solution. And then the coaching aspect as well, I thought was really interesting. It's not something I did before. And I think paired with a 360 review was really valuable. I think as a female leader, a lot of us experience imposter syndrome. And I think the 360 review was excellent at kind of providing real feedback from real people that was I suppose, well-rounded as well. And rather than feedback I may have had about myself that I made up in my own head and my own skills and my own leadership. So I think that was really good. And I think, like Shane said, with the coach's help through, I like that active listening and questioning, it was really valuable for me to understand where I was in my leadership career and whether I was ready for the next step. And I did actually take the next step in my career after this course. So I'm now working for a different company in a manager role. And I'm definitely applying a lot of things that I've learned here, like active listening. But also something else that I learned from the coaching was managing across and up rather than just managing down, because I think when you become a people manager, everybody always talks about managing down, right? And how you show up for the people that you manage, but not necessarily how you show up for people that manage you or your peers. So I've implemented some things that I learned in this course, like building up relationships with my peers, meeting with them on a regular basis to understand, their workloads, their perspectives, showing up for my direct leader, understanding their perspectives, understanding their deliverables, and seeing how, myself and my team can fit into that. And maybe not flagging just challenges, but flagging opportunities and flagging solutions to those, or potential solutions to those challenges as well. So yeah, I think this course was great in providing lots of tools, and I don't know how you guys did it, but you helped us implement them as well on a day-to-day basis, because I find a lot of other courses, you might see it, you might mentally make a tick in your head and say, yeah, I should do that, but you don't really apply it. But I definitely took a lot of things from this course that I continue to apply, and I hope to keep it up.
Julie, thank you so much. I think it's come clearly across, everyone that spoke today, the active listening, and then the fact that people actually felt, however, Derek and Marianne did what they did, but people really felt that psychological safety within the room. I think that's really, really important. And to bring Shane and Nora back onto the screen, I just really like, before we finish up, if as Siobhan has shared there, she's put up the link to book onto the program. She's also encouraged people to, if you have any questions, please come on and ask those questions. But overall, the impact of the program is quite clear, and it's very hard to be able to kind of, be able to get that message across. But I think you have very clearly brought it across today that, even if it's the networking, if it's putting yourself out there, it is taking those next steps. It's that awareness. It's implementing those small changes as well, and keeping them going. And it sounds like everybody that has done the program has kept those changes going, which I think is a mark of the type of program that it is. So, Derek and Marianne, I suppose I'd like to hand over to yourself to give us your last kind of thoughts on the reasons, if people have questions, what should people do next if they're interested in the program?
Yeah, well, I think firstly, as I was listening there, and thank you guys, it's really great to have some of this reflected back, and sometimes the language that we get back from Nora, Julie, and Shane and folks like them is better than the language we had before we started. And as I was listening there and listening to the echoes coming back, I thought two words really kind of bounced out at me that ran as a thread through them, and one of them was, and you said it just 2 minutes ago, twice or three times, and awareness. I think people, building that greater awareness of who they are, where they are, who they're interrelating with, etc. And then the word that Marianne started at the beginning with intentionality. And God Almighty, if you have that awareness of what's going on with you, who you want to be, where you want to go, what you want to do, the impact you want to have on people, and then you build that muscle of intentionality, you become pretty much unstoppable as long as you got the right tools. And yeah, I think I'm just so delighted to hear the feedback from the folks. I think the key thing here is do by all means pop the questions into the chat, but also feel free to reach out to Anne and Siobhan and Sarah with any other questions you have. And if you want to chat to any of us, you know, sometimes people are a little bit reluctant to come on and ask the questions here that they really want to ask. Reach out to us. We'll reach back. Marianne, do you want to put anything to that?
I guess the only thing I would add, well, first of all, I'm feeling really chuffed sitting here listening to you guys.
Yeah.
Like, seriously. And just also to say, just so nice to see you guys again. You know, I know we're on a webinar, but I just want to say that it's just lovely to see your faces again. One of the things that for me and for Derek is, you know, you go on a course and you get the book, you know, the book. And then the book, I don't know, it ends somewhere. It's gone, right? And for us, it's always about embodiment. Like I don't want you to need a book at the end of any training program that you do with us, because I want you to kind of have it in you, in your muscle, that you're living it and you're breathing it. And to hear you speak about your experience, that's kind of what I really reflected back to me. You're not going to remember everything. You're not going to take away everything, nor should you really. But there are certain elements that you just, they grow within you. And I guess one thing I would say about the program is we try really hard to have people experience the learning, not just hear the learning. So you talk about even like the active listening came up so much, but you guys shared raw human experiences and you listened into those experiences. And that's why it stayed with you, because you felt the impact of it. And I guess the other thing I would say is we encourage people to sort of, I guess, be experimenters. Right? Try stuff out, you know, and that's clearly what you've done. And yeah, and that's what we encourage in the program all the time is try it out, and let's talk about it when you come back. And as you know, when you come back, we always do a check-in. How are you getting on? What's happened? What's been different? What have you tried? What didn't work? And those conversations are, I guess, they're the fabric of any sort of good engagement, aren't they? So just to say thank you for that.
So we've come to the end of today, and I want to really acknowledge everyone for coming on here today, but particularly I want to say thank you to Nora, Shane and Julie for giving their time today and their feedback on the program and their insights on the program. I think it's really, really helpful. And I hope it's helpful to the people that are listening today, and to acknowledge Derek and Marianne for the work that they've done within the program. We know it's impactful, and I want to acknowledge that today. And as I say, and as everyone has said, reach out if you have any questions. We're more than happy to answer them all. And to thank everyone, and to have a good rest of the week. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.